support system. So I got a bunch of aquarium tanks donated to me from friends, and started growing and brewing algae in these green bubbling tanks in this mad science laboratory. And that was my main protein intake for 2.5 months before I got into Indie Bio, which is a biotech accelerator program.
Wait. So you are actually consuming like just jugs of algae just to feed
Globs, great
yourself.
green globs of greasy, grimy gopher guts. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back. So I'm really excited because I'm here with my dearest friend, Elliot Roth. He is the CEO of Spira, and he's been in the DIY biology community forever. He started, yes, exactly. He started when he was 14 years old, and in 2012, he discovered DIY biology, our really cool niche group. So I'm super excited to have him here. He's a person that I love just chatting with, shooting shit with, and every time I see him at a conference, I always spend time with him and just like hang out because he's such a chill, cool dude, and he loves giving me nuggets of information. So welcome, Elliot. I'm super excited.
You're making me blush. Oh my God.
I know. And the filter is just, there's no filter. So hashtag no filter.
Hashtag
Elliot.
no filter. Yep. Hashtag hashtags.
Hashtag. So a really cool contribution he's made in the past is a Medium post called a Guide to DIY Bio. And that's going to be in the link below. So you could definitely check it out. And it's a really great way to get started and, learn more about the community and about what we're doing. And it really breaks it down to like where you can source things, where you can find things. And it's a great resource that I always push to people that are brand new inside of our community. So we'll definitely be checking that out for a bit. Elliot has had such a long road to get here. And it's been interesting finding peaks and valleys of his career. And, we're really excited to figure out like what makes him tick. So Elliot, why don't you give us like a 0 to hero moment of what you've been doing right now, and what have you been doing in the past to get here?
Yeah. So more recently, I have been running Spira, which is it's now 4.5-year-old company. We are a profitable synthetic biology algae company, which is I gainfully employ 4 people and 2 people part-time and a number of contractors. And we work on replacing artificial colors and animal proteins from the supply chain. And we do that using extremophiles, cyanobacteria. And we work with a network of farmers all over the world to actually grow and cultivate our different kinds of algae. And and so the way that I actually got there is a very circuitous route. And it passed all the way through DIY bio and community biology on the way there. And so I first discovered synthetic biology when I was 14, and I came across Roger Cien's Nobel Prize for the discovery of like GFP, green fluorescent protein, and I was geeking out. And I tried to make glowing tadpoles for my friends and failed miserably, and it was really bad. And so I kept on trying and failing and trying and failing. I tried to join the Virginia United iGEM team. I was living in Virginia when I was growing up. And I got rejected because they said I was too young, and due to insurance issues, they couldn't let me on the team. And then I went from there to try to start my own iGEM team when I was at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, and in my first year of college. And they didn't want to do an iGEM team. They didn't want to do anything fun. I kept on having all these crazy ideas and getting rejected. And eventually I got so fed up of coming into the lab every single day for 8 months. I would show up every single day and just wash dishes. And so I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to get together with my friends and we're going to start our own laboratory and do hands-on experimentation that way. And I didn't know it at the time, but there were a number of labs around 2012 or so that were already established. And so I started visiting those labs. I went up to Bugs, I went to GenSpace, I went and visited BioCurious, and I started learning about how to build a community around biology, biotechnology, science, just in general, hosted a number of meetups and got together enough of a community and group that we actually launched this laboratory that we called Indie Lab in a garage space in Richmond, Virginia. And when we found the laboratory, there were like bullet holes in the wall and spiders in the rafters. It was completely condemned. Pressure washed the floor, sealed everything, scrubbed it all down, and eventually collected close to, between $500,000 and $1 million worth of laboratory equipment over the course of 3 years, from donations, dumpster diving, and put it all together in this laboratory that is still in operation today. And that was the very first community bio laboratory that I started. And then I grouped together a bunch of other laboratories in the Virginia area. There were 5 different labs. And we started having routine meetups and built a little bit of a coalition of laboratories. And then more recently, because I was doing all of that, I was focused on that much more than my studies and focused on that much more than finding a real job. And so just like many people in the DIY bio and community biohacking community, I ended up graduating or leaving academia, leaving all of that, and not being able to really find a job that met my passions. And I looked around, I was looking for stuff like 3D printing in space and astrobiology and synthetic biology. And I couldn't really find anything. So I decided to start consulting, but I had a couple of clients that never really paid me and wound up, pretty destitute. And I could have moved into my parents' basement. Luckily, they're really supportive. But I wanted to figure it out. So I started couch surfing, and my only cost was food. And I looked into being able to feed myself on microbes and using the laboratory as a means of feeding myself. So I started growing spirulina algae based on a research paper I read from NASA called the Controlled Ecological Life Support System. So I got a bunch of aquarium tanks donated to me from friends, and started growing and brewing algae in these green bubbling tanks in this mad science laboratory. And that was my main protein intake for 2.5 months before I got into Indie Bio, which is a biotech accelerator program.
Wait. So you are actually consuming like just jugs of algae just to feed
Globs, great
yourself?
green globs of greasy, grimy gopher guts. Yes. Yeah.
How,
Um,
how did you like cook it in any way, or just like,
so the aha moment, the core of this, and part of the reason why I was geeking out over algae, is that when you have it fresh, it has no taste, and it's mostly protein. So I was having like these big scoops of green paste. It's kind of like the consistency of avocado almost, and I would eat that, and then my costs were pretty negligible, and I would have that as my main protein intake, and it was fresh, and so it had no taste. And I realized that only during processing does it degrade and break down and have that kind of umami flavor associated with algae. And so I was like, there's something there. And pretty soon I realized this took a couple years, to be honest. I realized that the main component of the flavor was the degradation of the color, the pigments that cause algae to grow. And so when you pull out the pigments, you're left with this amazing protein base that can be blended and used as a replacement for plant-based egg, cheese, meat. And then you have this blue color that you use as a replacement for artificial colors, from anything from like Gatorade to blue jeans. And so that's kind of what the company is doing currently. But I tried and failed so many times, different companies. This is my 8th company altogether. My more recent one was a COVID diagnostic company, which started and then ended in the span of 3 months because we only raised $100,000 in the span of a couple of weeks and didn't have enough money to set up an automated robotic shipping container testing laboratory. So just try things, really. Like, I've been experimenting with different things to solve real problems for as long as I can remember. And really, I think the core of it is when you try something out, you don't know whether or not it's going to work. And so part of the ignorance is bliss. One of my favorite scientific papers is The Importance of Stupidity in Scientific Research. It's really important to say you don't know and admit that, you make mistakes. And so I think I've made a lot of mistakes along the way and learned a lot of lessons.
yeah, totally. So, you've been weaving a lot between nonprofit work and for-profit work. What type of work is more interesting to you?
So I liken the kind of work that I do, and the intersection of the two is building really great communities that serve as tools of like opportunity for people. And what I really enjoy doing is making those connections. And so whether or not it's in kind of my day-to-day job and starting companies and like putting people together on different project teams and stuff like that, and making sure they connect in the right way and are set up and properly, or setting up these community bio laboratories. I mean, I think I'm on community bio laboratory number 5. Some of them have been home labs, garage space in Richmond. I set up one in the attic of a mansion in Georgetown at one point. And then most recently, I built a laboratory in a shipping container. And the objective is not to have like a particular space or have a particular idea, because the idea or the location doesn't matter as much as the people behind it. And if you have the right people, you really can do anything with the right group of people if they really relate and connect in the best kind of way.
So you're obviously super passionate about synthetic biology and whatnot. What is and then you kind of touched on it, of just surrounding yourself with really cool individuals, the people that have the same passion as you. What is a model for success for you that's been working out?
Yeah. I think what really works out is like I said, having the right people. But I think beyond the team that you put together around a given idea, you want the timing to be right. Like for some synthetic biology ideas, they're very out there in the realm of the improbable. I'm not going to say impossible or anything like that. I think most anything can be done if you take the time to do it. But because it's so out there, the adoption of it is very, very slow. And so if you're talking about stuff like human genetic engineering, yes, of course, you can do things like that. But like the amount of reactions around it, the kind of sort of method of approach, what I found works really, really well is you start off with your idea of a utopia that you want to see. And what is the best possible case of the world? And then work backwards from that. And so if you start off with the idea like, hey, I would love everybody to have gills and live in a world where you can swim underwater, right? Well, how do you actually get there in a way that right now you can take a realistic, pragmatic approach and take those steps to make that happen? If that really is your dream, how do you actually set it up so that that can happen? Well, maybe the way that you work it is, initially you want to make it so that animals that can't have gills have gills. And you do that as a means of showcasing not only the technology, but maybe that solves a real problem that some animal suffers from, or something like that. Or you work on fish genetics, right? As a means of understanding that. So what are the stepwise process working backwards from the utopian idea that you have in the world back to the beginning, and then from that beginning forwards to that utopian idea. And it's really important to understand all the steps in that process. Otherwise, you're never going to make it actually happen. So like my dream is to replace all of the carbon producing ingredients that we have with carbon consuming ingredients that are carbon negative. And it's really my idea to go about a new biomanufacturing platform that enables us to produce things locally. Because I think that our current supply chains are really messed up. And if you can produce things yourself, or if you have a local kind of like algae brew pub that you can go to for the kind of insulin that you need or whatever you might need, that would be the best case scenario.
All right, cool. My last question for you is, what does biohacking mean to you?
So biohacking is the idea of going outside the norm as a means of opening something up. That's what hacking is normally, but I think for biohacking in particular, it's kind of this gray area, this almost taboo subject area, because what you're doing is you're hacking yourself. And I think moving forward into the future, we're going to be fraught in this morally gray territory where people are opening up their own biologies and really seeking to understand what goes on there. And so to me, biohacking is really toying with biology in such a way that you're playing with biology, biotechnology outside of the norm of academia industry, and doing it in a way that opens up possibilities to everyone.
Awesome. So Elliot, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure interviewing you. To get in touch with Elliot, there's a link below. You can get in contact with him. He also teaches a class through GenSpace, which is really taking off. It's called How to Grow Your Own Dye Using Algae. And GenSpace offers that class. And it's how many weeks is it?
So 2 classes spread out over 3 weeks. I also have taught classes before at the Institute for Art and Olfaction on how to create biosynthetic scents. So be on the lookout from various community bio groups as a means of signing up for these kind of classes.
Cool. Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah. And then be sure to check out that Medium post. It's updated every single year. I think it's due for another update soon.
It's due for another update.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's a great deep dive into just like what goes on in this space. If you have a proposal and if you want to do something like this, please get in touch with me and pitch a proposal to me through my email. And be sure to join the Facebook community for the Biohacking and Genetic Engineering Design Group. That's where we all meet most of the time. So thanks so much, and I'll catch you later. Bye.